Dave's right. When I went in, it was a tough job. I was getting a lot of, no, that's not how we've worked before. And I went, yeah, but that's no defence for not changing. You know, if you take on Agile, you take on an attitude, and you can't say and defend anything that I talk about and what you've done before. I'm happy to take the best elements of what you've done before and move forward on them. But I want to know what they are. I'm not just going to say, well, okay, I'm taking use cases because that's what you think is best. I challenged it. What is it in the use case that you wanted? And in the end, with the use case story, all they required was a template. So we got a template on our wiki, and use cases weren't used, our story was used, and we had the detail associated to a story on the wiki. And the first thing that you really have to accept is that using an Agile method does not mean that stakeholders will get what they want. It simply means they'll be able to control the team and get the most business value or the least cost. You know, you don't go in saying, you know, I'm going to solve all your problems. They're all going to just go away. In fact, what you're going to do is you're going to be having more problems, because the transparency of Agile is going to mean that you're going to have to, the business is going to have to, and PCB are going to make stronger decisions. And they're going to have to make them a lot more often, because you reflect a lot more often within Agile than you would over a waterfall project. And this alone was a hard message to sell, but I think we're there. And you know, Dave did mention it, and it really is a success in that we do have a PCB who think differently. We do have stakeholders who think differently, and when you see users coming back with emails like that, their mindset is changing, and it changed, in my mind, quite rapidly. We are 6 months into a program of work with people who have like 20 years experience in NAB Capital or in investment banking, and they were able to change their attitude in that short period. So it's not an impossible task. So when I went in, I'm not perfect, I made some mistakes as well. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is situational leadership. And in situational leadership, you need to tell, sell, participate, and then start delegating. And I went in straight away and I started telling pretty quickly. And I expected participation almost immediately. And really I hadn't sold the message as well as I could. And when I realised this, I put my hand up and said, okay, I'll be a Scrum Master. So I haven't been a coach for 6 months. I've been an iteration manager, I've been a Scrum Master, I've been whatever the project needs. I needed to lead. I needed to show the attitude so I'd get people to follow. And I love this slide, because when we went in, Agile was really ever only talked about at this level. It was a development, it was a programmer's theory. It had nothing to do with anybody else. It didn't affect me. I've heard a lot of times that, you know, Agile is just the exact same thing with a different message. It's not. We had to cross quite a lot of barriers, and each one of these touch points required a number of negotiation stages. And in the PCBs at the top, because without them and without their support, how would we ever be able to change anybody else? And we got that, and I will talk to you about how we did. But to feel that, you know, you can do this in isolation of every other area within your company is incorrect. You need to consider them. You need to engage with them. And sometimes, like with architecture, we followed the process, but we cut it down to as bare minimum that we could. We tried to work within the constraints that we had. We challenged them as best we could. So how did we do that? Well, we talk about our planning. And really, our planning stages is there's 5 phases. There's the vision, the roadmap, and really that's really PCB stakeholder at the top tier. And we need that to be an Agile message as well. Release iteration, that's where we, you know, our middle tier, where we're actually talking about delivery, and daily is the, you know, the engagement between the people who actually do the work, how they work together, how the programmers talk to analysts. I'm a certified Scrum coach and trainer, and my framework for organising people and organising communication is through Scrum. I'm not here to teach Scrum today, but basically what we do is we have a large backlog of work. We decide with our stakeholders and with every other interested party what we should do within the next iteration. We try to break that down into tasks, work within a short cycle, and have something to show at the end of it. But when we were making the decision of, okay, what do we do in the next iteration? there was a tendency that for the first 6 months we'd actually show nothing, because we had to have all of the architecture up and running, all of the, our architects and some of our designers, they wanted everything to be up ready and waiting. And I challenged that straight away. I said, no, that's not happening. And the reason why I tore up David's blue cards is not because I didn't like what they were saying, it's because I didn't like how they were being said. So instead of saying something like, I want DR, I changed it to a user perspective. What does the user want? I mean, I don't, really, Dave, what does the user want? What will the user get out of this? How can I sell that message to the user? And we talk about sustainability then. And that's how you got to talk. That's how you challenge. Because in the end, the business driver is the white. However, the business has to accept that there's a technical tax associated with any software development. And in the past, we've hidden that. And what we tried to do was show it and sell it, and make people appreciate that all the underlying hidden taxes that the technology that we were having to support needed. And the challenge is to reduce that technical tax over time. So how did we do that? Well, we had this is a backlog for a certain amount of work that we had to do within a period of time. The blue is representing this technical tax. And what you can notice is that when we were doing our breakdown of our stories, only 5 of the technical stories got into the first release. Only 1 got into the second, and some of the real nice to haves is in phase 3. And that's how the project has worked. There is certain pieces of, in Agile implementations that we're only doing in phase 3. And there was good reasons for that, because we had to prove a return on investment a lot earlier. If I had all of those blue cards at the start, release 1 would have been meaningless. I wouldn't have had our user in New Zealand saying some nice things about the project. He had a deliverable within 3 months that he can use. And although we have to do some extra technical work now, he's still using it today. They're going to do their close of business and work within the frame that we gave them. They might want more usability, but right now they can actually do some work. Okay, so now we've decided what we're going to do within our first release. How do we break that down? Well, we started to break down the iterations. Now, again, this isn't an Agile class, so we just had an idea of how much we could do within an iteration. We split up the tasks accordingly. Again, you'll see that the technical tasks are spread evenly across the iterations. I didn't want to have an iteration 0 where I was going to see no benefits to the business. Okay, so this is all well and good, and I'm trying to push this kind of message across. And in doing so, I'm allowing the teams to actually decide how best to do this. They're involved in this planning. So in the end, I'm empowering every single person to assist in the decision making. And one of the biggest problems I had to do, and one of the behaviours I had to change pretty quickly, was making them a target. I didn't want, and this is very important, that you don't want to give the idea that, yes, we're all empowered to work together, and then have them being a moving target for when something goes wrong, you shoot the last messenger. We had to make sure that the agreement was a collective, and it always is a collective across all parties. We always have our business involved, we always have our PCB involved, we always have the team involved. We need to make sure that that involvement remains, and that we do not have people hanging out for targets, because what will happen is that people will stop talking. You only have to do that once to have somebody be silent, because they fall into needing to protect themselves. What can I say that's not going to get me in trouble, rather than what I really need to say.